Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, which usually is not time for charting, but Lon, we had a 4-day weekend, or a 3-day weekend over the weekend, not 4 days, the Veterans Day weekend. So we are here today on a special Tuesday edition of charting. We'll be back to normal next week, and then we'll be all thrown off again because I don't know how
it's that time of year.
It's that time of year.
We'll be back again in January.
But the good news is that I got 4-day weekend numbers, at least domestically for you, so it's not all a wash. And Lon, here in the U.S., the story was The Grinch, but worldwide, it was another film that we'll talk about in a second.
Yes.
But let's get the domestic box office out of the way first. The Grinch is atop the box office yet again for the second time in my lifetime, and probably not the last.
No, almost definitely not.
So these are the 4-day numbers. This is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and yesterday, Monday. Over 4 days, The Grinch has banked $78 million. It banked about $10 million yesterday. That and Nutcracker, they both benefited from the fact that there were a lot of schools here in the U.S. that were off for Veterans Day, so the family pictures got a little bit of a bump. So $78 million through 4 days. That's more than Skyscraper earned domestically.
In its entirety, wow.
It's the third best 3-day opening for Universal this year, behind Halloween and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. So a good start to them for the Grinch.
Yeah. There's always skepticism about these Seuss adaptations, but usually they work. They do pretty well.
Well, let's look at how well they worked, because what we're going to look at, what a segue, thank you, Lon, is Dr. Seuss Adaptations. Again, this is through 4 days. Now, of course, because these all come out around holidays and everything else, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison here, but let's look just generally at how the films have done through 4 days. Right now, The Grinch is leading the pack after 4 days. The Lorax actually had a better 3-day opening weekend, but because The Grinch had that holiday Monday, it's gone up over the 4 days. We'll see how those two movies do in the days to come. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is third, followed by Horton Hears a Who, also with Jim Carrey. Two Jim Carrey, Dr. Seuss things there.
And then it makes sense.
The Cat in the Hat.
Terrifying.
Still creeps me out. Now, you see How the Grinch Stole Christmas in the middle there after 4 days. The thing to keep in mind is that movie came out in the year 2000. Right now, it's the top grossing Dr. Seuss adaptation of all time with $260 million domestic. However, if you were to adjust that for inflation, that's closer to $440 million. So I don't think the Grinch is going to get there.
No, probably not.
However, it was made for about $75 million, which for animation is a pretty modest budget. So to make back the budget, it's not profitable, obviously, after the first week, but to have an opening week, 4 days that makes the budget back, that's a good start.
I feel like with these kinds of movies, too, they're focused, obviously, on their box office, their theatrical opening doing well this year, but you're also kind of aiming for that repeat.
Right. They're going to go in 2 weeks. They're going to go in 3 weeks.
Exactly. It's like this is hopefully going to play straight through Christmas if they play their cards right.
And as Joe Starr will tell you, The Grinch had a huge marketing budget. So I'm sure they have a lot more to make up than some other films.
Sure.
But, not too much to frown about in The Grinch's
They're doing great. Yeah.
Through 4 days. Let's look at the other films on the North American box office charts. Bohemian Rhapsody, number 2, $35 million. It dropped off. The 3-day weekend was about 39%. That's a good hold for an awards hopeful, particularly when it opened higher than was expected. So it's already passed $100 million domestic after 2 weekends of release. Its global totals approaching $300 million. I'm not going to be saying that about the Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
No.
It dropped about 50%, which its only hope domestically was for it to have a holiday hold.
Yeah.
For it to open as low as it did and then to drop 50% does not bode well for that film domestically.
More realms. They needed more realms.
They needed more realms.
Just 4?
I would have liked at least 16 realms.
Gotta give me more realms.
Thor has more realms than the Nutcracker does.
You don't want to get out-realmed.
You don't want to get out-realmed, particularly by someone under the same corporate umbrella. It actually, for the 3-day weekend, placed 4th, but because it got a little bump in the family business, it's 3rd for the entire 4-day weekend. And the movie that was 3rd in the box office weekend and 4th over the 4-day weekend, this is so confusing, is over. They pretty much made the same amount of money. That's easy.
Yeah.
Is Overlord, which came from Paramount. That was made for about $38 million, but a lot of people expected it to maybe open higher just because it has that kind of prestige, that J.J. Abrams pedigree, Mystery Machine juju going on. Not so much for this one. Cinema Score audiences gave it a B, so kind of a so-so thing. I'm actually a little surprised. I liked this movie, but I've seen some reaction online, people saying that it just wasn't what they thought it would be, that they actually thought it was going to be more of a creature feature that it ended up being.
I think it's one of those movies that's kind of towing the line between action and horror, which doesn't necessarily always like hit it for people.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's going to be one that people discover maybe later on Netflix or wherever else.
I feel like this is going to be one that horror fans sort of embrace over the next few years, probably.
Rounding out the top 5 is A Star is Born. It spent its 6th weekend in the top 5. It dropped just 26% over the 3-day weekend from last weekend to this weekend. It is quickly approaching the domestic top 10 list. It's looking to knock off A Quiet Place, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. But a movie that opened outside of the top 5 was Sony's, and this is the full official title, The Girl in the Spider's Web, A New Dragon Tattoo Story. That's the official title.
Did they really think people weren't going to figure out if they just went with Girl in the Spider's Web? It is the name of one of the books.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of the series anyway, you know that that's one of the books.
Well, I think this is where, as they kind of dissect what happened, first of all, the original 2011 film, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, was not a runaway hit. It was budgeted around $90 million. It just nudged over 100 domestically. It did okay overseas, which is sort of what kept it from really being...
I feel like at the time it was considered a disappointment because it was David Fincher and it was Daniel Craig.
It had the awards prestige. It did generate a Best Actress nomination for Rooney Mara for that film. But this one, I think, the original film, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, got an A cinema score. Girl in the Spider's Web got a B. That, again, indicates kind of so-so audience reaction.
Yeah.
And sort of like you're talking about, well, people would know if they know that. I think this might have been a case of where they were trying to please everybody and they ended up pleasing no one because they chronologically jumped over the next 2 books that people sort of knew from that Millennium Trilogy and started over, which I think might have turned off some of the hardcore fans.
Well, especially because this book wasn't written by Stieg Larsson, who created Lisbeth Salander and these characters, which is weird. They jumped right to one of the books that came after his death.
Yeah, so I think some of the hardcore fans might have been turned off by that, and then some of the more casual fans just were never really going to go.
I mean, a Lisbeth Salander movie doesn't really mean that much to a lot of people.
Content-wise, I saw it. We didn't get to do a full review here on news, but I thought it was a pretty generic spy movie. You could take the name Lisbeth Salander out of it and put in Jason Bourne or Ethan Hunt, and it could be something from any one of those franchises. So just missed the mark, really, kind of all around. It did about, $8 million here, I think about the same in foreign sales, which is not good because it opened in a lot of foreign markets this weekend. So.
Well, and it's a movie that should have more international appeal than necessarily just the average American blockbuster. It's a European
It can always pick up some steam. It's got a few markets left. It was made for about half as much as the original movie, so that it's got that going for it, but not a great start.
Instead of David Fincher. You can save on the budget.
There you go. 14 less takes on every shot.
Exactly.
That saves a lot of money, half the takes. Sure. So we'll see what happens with the Dragon Tattoo saga. Looking at the top per screen, the Grinch stole Christmas and the top per screen average. But really, the story here is not so much what is top per screen, but what isn't. Grinch had $16,000 per screen on over 4,000 screens. But there was another film, what was at one time considered to be sort of an award, ironically, an awards frontrunner. Called The Frontrunner, from Jason Reitman, who directed Juno. He directed a movie called Tully that came out earlier this year. It played in just 4 theaters, but the average on it was $12,000, which is extremely low for a movie that is sort of hyped to have this prestige run. You're looking at maybe $40,000 or more for a movie that's really got the buzz going. Critical response has been very mixed on this movie, and it seems like the audience is just certainly not flocking out in its first limited release weekend. Lon, we've talked with the documentary genre about how just everything except for political documentaries seems to be doing well this year. I wonder if it's a case of people just being burnt out on politics in general.
I was going to make this exact same point. I think that's exactly what it is. I think politics, especially right after the midterms, I think people are just burned out on that as a topic. They want to go see anything else at the theaters, and we're just seeing tons of political-minded movies just not connect, especially this one that's about a failed presidential campaign, an old scandal. I think people are just kind of worn out.
So Hugh Jackman really was the one that they were thinking a big Oscar push for, but not great results on opening weekend, either critically or from an audience response. So this could ironically be the front runner for the Oscar Best Actor may have fallen out of the race early on.
It's a tough sell. I mean, I just don't feel like a lot of people who aren't very immersed in the world of politics even remember the Gary Hart 1988 campaign. Yeah, like it's older already. You got to be kind of in your 30s or up to even recall it. And it was a blip. It wasn't like a major.
The movie's a very muddled message too. I saw it last week, and it's very. There's a lot of odd choices in that film versus how they portray events and what events they choose to follow. So I think it's just the combination of the environment and a critical miss and just something that audiences just might not be interested in.
Yeah, I feel like if it had been, when the reviews came out, if it had been like, okay, the movie's so-so, but Hugh Jackman's essential, you got to see it. Like that would have gotten people in New York and LA out to go check it out. But it was like, all right, this is okay, kind of a mixed bag, and there's just too much going on, too much out.
Lon, this happens every so often where a worldwide box office story is really, I think, a bigger story than what's happening here domestically, at least for our audience, which is largely based here in the United States and North America.
But if you care about the charting.
But if you care about the charting, you know that we care about the world. And there was a huge story that happened on the world stage this weekend. For real this time, I did not fake you out by saying that Venom was opening in China last weekend like I did the week before. Venom actually did open in China. And let's look at the worldwide box office charts. Holy cow, look at that.
They loved it.
They love Venom in China.
Wow.
Venom opened over $100 million over the 3-day weekend. That was Sony's biggest ever opening in China. That is the second best three-day debut for any superhero film in China, behind only Infinity War. They love Venom.
They love Venom. Who knew?
China is asking for more Venom, please. We can look at the other films that are on the chart. It's pretty standard. Bohemian Rhapsody, another $94 million. That's doing well both internationally and abroad. The Grinch banked 80. That's mostly from its domestic debut here. The Nutcracker in the Four Realms, and then Overlord rounding out the chart. But Venom is what I really want to lock into because I wanted to kind of dig down into this and see why Venom.
Yeah, well,
out of all the movies that have come out, superhero movies and otherwise, why is Venom the one that has broken out so big?
Especially because it seems like it has kind of a quirky sense of humor that might not as easily translate as something that's bigger and more accessible and more action-oriented.
Well, we talked about, particularly with the Deadpool films recently here, how marketing can really fuel a film's opening. And there were a lot of things that I found around Venom's marketing that might have done this. And one reason I think why Venom did so well was when you look at the co-producers and co-financiers of the film. One of Venom's co-financiers was a company called Tencent Pictures, reportedly with a 25% stake in the movie. Now, Tencent Pictures is part of this massive conglomerate in China called Tencent. It's credited as the world's largest gaming and social media company. In 2017, it was valued more than Facebook. And so Tencent Pictures is one arm of this massive company. They run social networks, gaming, TV, any arm of the media that you can name. Tencent has a massive presence, particularly in China. So you have Tencent, who has a 25% stake in this movie. They, in turn, have access to so many different avenues for media, for getting the word out, for marketing. I was looking up some of the movies that Tencent had also co-produced and co-financed, and it turns out, surprise, they all did really, really well in China. One of them was Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was co-produced by Tencent. Wonder Woman made $90 million at the Chinese box office. That is comparable to Batman v Superman. Batman v Superman made 95. Justice League made 106. So Tencent, Wonder Woman did very well in the Chinese box office, holding up to the other films that, at least in BVS's case, globally, did higher numbers. Kong Skull Island, also co-produced by Tencent. Kong Skull Island made $168 million in China. As a matter of fact, it essentially tied the North American market as the biggest market for that film globally. And then, of course, the biggie, when you look at Tencent's power in China, it invested in Warcraft. Warcraft was not a hit here in North America.
Right.
nor really anywhere else. It made $213 million. They tapped in. It wasn't just Tencent, but Tencent, of course, as they invested and had a stake in it, helped with the marketing, with the promotional push. It pretty much single-handedly saved that project from being a complete disaster. $213 million in the Chinese market alone.
Well, they were even talking, I remember when Warcraft opened, they were actually talking about, like, maybe they're going to make a sequel just for Asian markets. Like, make the sequel just for Chinese fans, because North American fans didn't care.
Right.
But the Chinese were super into it.
Yeah, super into it. So one of the services that Tencent offers, again, it has a 25% stake in Venom reportedly, is in the Chinese market, it did the film's marketing campaign. And I looked up a few different examples, and it actually did a few things that were very brilliant because they targeted it. They weren't selling the movie just as the movie. They were really targeting it to China, to Chinese fans, and really sort of a regional specific marketing campaign that obviously paid off in spades. First of all, I found these were two posters that they released. And again, this is a way of selling Venom, that kind of ink wash art, very evocative of Chinese culture, of Asian culture, and sort of tying it kind of almost like a kaiju type look,
or like a demon.
Sort of the looks of these kind of monsters that have do so well and so many Chinese productions and movies like Pacific Rim, which did incredibly well in China. And then these are my favorites. So I found these were released by the official. These weren't fan things. These were released by the Sony Pictures China official social media. These were a series of advertisements featuring Venom that essentially sold Venom as the best boyfriend in the world. Venom is your boyfriend, essentially. I found the pictures from Chinese social media, and then I found translations for this text. There's an article I found on Shortlist. The translations were done by Xiaoting Christine Ni. I hope that I didn't butcher that name, but I want to give credit where credit is due. I found translations for these. So this is one that says, it translates to, "I'm holding on to happiness with both tentacles." So there's Venom, that's a nice little subway train ride. Here's the next one. This one is subtitled, "Who's that good-looking dude?" It's Venom. Right. But look, see, he's helping. Yeah, no, he's helping with the selfie. The symbiote arm is coming out.
It's interesting that this ties into American culture too. We've been kind of having all this like Thanos's Bay and all these like monsters look thick or whatever. Like it's the world is kind of discovering the love of
monsters,
romantic monsters.
And here's what I like about that: not only is Venom taking the selfie, he doesn't even care if he's in that selfie. Look at the camera. He's getting a good shot of the ladies there. Yeah, he's like, I don't care about me. This is all about taking a picture.
His face is not even going to show up in that.
What a good dude! All right, let's look at the next one. This one is subtitled, "Life's most beautiful moment is the instant when I hold up an umbrella for you." And he's got a Venom umbrella.
Well, that's right. It's an extension of himself.
It's a symbiote umbrella. Yeah. A symbiote-brella. Symbiote-brella.
That's how that's.
And then this one is my favorite. Venom using his many tentacles to hold on to the myriad of shopping bags. This says, "Shopping has become a beautiful thing ever since I met you."
Oh, for Singles Day.
For Singles, yeah, exactly. Right, which it opened on Singles Day.
Of course, yeah.
Or partly on Singles Day.
I think so, yeah.
But this is, I think, a really good example of taking a way of marketing a film and the way that a company like Tencent can do when you're based in the Chinese market. You can market a film directly to a specific regional market in a way that's going to resonate with them. And what we've seen time and time again with the movies that Tencent has co-financed or co-produced is that they are able to get these films to open in the Chinese market consistently and make really good grosses, which is good news for the next film that they are handling the marketing for in the Chinese market, which is Bumblebee.
Sure.
Bumblebee is being handled by Tencent in China. Transformers traditionally has been a pretty strong franchise. As it has here in the U.S., it's fallen off a little bit in the past few years. But if you're Paramount, who's obviously also involved in this, what you want is for Tencent to do their magic, because reports have come in. Bumblebee here domestically is opening in a very competitive box office market. Sure. Plus, the air has kind of come out of the Transformers balloon. There's already been, tracking in advance is completely inaccurate.
As we've discussed before.
As we've discussed before. But even the advanced tracking isn't looking great as far as it's not going to be right now like a $90 million opening.
Right, yeah.
So Bumblebee could be a film that needs extra help from foreign markets. So that's what I'm going to look forward to. They're also handling Terminator 6.
Sure. Yeah.
Which Terminator Genesis, that franchise was considered dead until Terminator Genesis came out and actually did really well in China. So those are the movies that I'm going to look for, and I really want to look at Tencent's other future films, the things that they're involved in, because right now they're really proving themselves to be a marketing powerhouse as far as opening films in the Chinese market. So Bumblebee, keep your eye on it, and we probably won't be able to address it till 2019. Or I'm not sure when the Bumblebee date's even going to be in China.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting too, because it's kind of, we can't tell because we're only looking at it in hindsight, but it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing too. Obviously, they're great at selling these movies and your examples of specifically marketing them to the markets where they're going. But it's also like they're probably pretty good at having a sense of what is going to play for their audiences versus what isn't. I mean, there are, we can look at like, obviously, comic book type projects, robots, monsters. Like, some people at Tencent obviously have a good mind for like, we can sell this. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, and I mean, as with any huge faceless conglomerate, there's been all, there's always, with the idea of something that big itself, there are always drawbacks
and variables that you can't
predict. But as far as marketing, what they've been able to do so far with the things that they've co-financed, I think in a time where you're seeing Chinese financing of Hollywood films lessen, they are actually proving to be one of the few partners so far that has been able to produce consistent results as you've seen the influence of movies decline from the North American market in China. They actually seem to so far be able to produce consistent results. So that could be a company to keep an eye on as far as who partners with them and which films they partner with, which studios partner with them, or do they continue to throw? Because they also throw a lot of their support behind the Chinese domestic box office market. Do they throw more of their weight there? That's kind of the interesting thing to watch over the next year or two is, as China turns away from outside influences, do they continue to invest and support films at this level?
Yeah, because they're the company behind like Detective Chinatown 2 and all those Wolf Brigade movies that
massive hits
show up on the top 10 early in the year.
Yes. Yeah. So speaking of, let's look at God, you're so great with the segues
really
today,
nailing
Lon.
it today.
We actually had some movement on the worldwide 2018 box office chart, and Detective Chinatown 2 dropped out in favor of Venom. Venom jumps onto the chart at number 7. It is now topped Detective Chinatown 2, which it knocked out, Operation Red Sea, Ready Player One, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it is biting up Deadpool 2's ankles there. If you look at how traditionally how superhero films have done in China, their openings will usually account for 50-ish% of their final gross. If that holds true, it would definitely pass Deadpool 2. But it could also, with help from other markets, it's opened in Japan. It's still making some money here in the U.S. There's an outside chance it could even jump into that top 5, which would be crazy.
And none of us at the beginning of the year were like, Venom, top 5 of the year.
Top 5 Venom.
I was skeptical as to whether it would come out. I think.
Solo? What's Solo? I think it made something like, I looked up, its opening weekend was 6.7 times Solo's final gross in China. Venom's opening weekend.
Yikes.
That's insane.
Not excited about Solo.
In China. No one seemed to be. So, Lon, that is the charting, the report for this week. I apologize if my voice is a little scratchy. I'm on the very tail end of a head cold, so you sound a little husky. I've got like my radio voice going today. Next week, the train does not stop rolling from here to the end of the year.
No, it's nonstop.
The Wizarding World returns this weekend with Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Get out your encyclopedia of magic, because we've all got a lot of cramming to do.
Or as they say in the film, Grindelwald. So have I been saying it wrong the whole time?
I went back because we did a cram it, so I went back and watched. They do say Grindelwald.
I guess I need to start calling him Grindelwald.
Grindelwald.
Although I was reading in the Harry Potter audiobooks, they say Voldemort. And then the feature said Voldemort. Wrong. So there's a pronunciation problem. He's using the original
French. It's Voldemort.
There's a pronunciation problem with the big bads in the Harry Potter universe because however it is, I'm saying it wrong. So the Crimes of Grindelwald.
Yeah.
opens this weekend.
Sounds more menacing.
It does sound Grindelwald. It does sound menacing. That opens this weekend, along with Widows from Oscar-winning director Steve McQueen, not the star of Bullet, but the director.
Different Steve
McQueen. That is a really interesting film that I think we're going to review this week. I have to get with Roth and figure out our schedule because we have a couple of different ones that we have to juggle. But I would really want to review it, and I'm glad to get some extra time because there's a lot of really.
It's an interesting movie.
There's a lot of moving parts to that thing.
Yeah,
that I'm still thinking out.
I saw it at Beyond Fest a few weeks ago. I really liked it.
Yeah, I think it's got some amazing stuff in it, and it's got some stuff in it I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not what you expect.
Yeah, it's definitely not what you expect. And then Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg,
Rose Byrne,
which I did not get a chance to see. I was busy last week the night. I had to go see another movie the night they had the screening, but I've heard was surprisingly good.
I've read all good things so far. The buzz on it is very positive.
So not that you would expect it to be bad, but I think that there's sometimes an expectation going in. I forget who I was talking to, but said they were expecting Daddy's Home 3.
Yeah, domestic comedies with Mark Wahlberg. I've
heard nothing but
alert
good things.
goes up, but this one supposedly is, and Rose Byrne is delightful. I almost always like
Rose Byrne.
Yeah.
Also expanding into a wider release is A Private War, starring Rosamund Pike. She's getting some Oscar buzz for her performance in that film. That expands to 800 plus screens, and then one movie that is really catching some buzz now a little bit later, you sort of have the first wave of movies like The Front Runner, which we talked about, and A Star is Born, the ones that sort of get the early festival buzz.
Sure.
This is one that I've begun hearing more and more about in the last couple weeks that I think is really picking up some momentum, maybe at the right time. Green Book is opening in 25 theaters. It begins its limited run. I've heard buzz from every performance to the movie itself. I'm really looking forward to seeing this
Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen starring. I mean, two great actors who both you could easily see getting into Best Actor, Supporting Actor discussions.
Yeah.
And it's directed by, it's Peter Farrelly, I think?
One of the Farrellys.
One of the two Farrelly brothers.
Which I have to look up which one it is, but
that's fascinating.
That is, I love when directors from comedies do other, like Adam McKay doing The Big Short,
right?
When I heard that, I was like, really?
And then
I really like that.
Yeah,
movie.
it kind of works when it comes together.
Vice, I can't wait to see.
I'm excited for Vice. But the trailers for Green Book, it looks great. I'm really excited for that.
So there you go. Some Oscar hopefuls, some blockbusters, some dramas, family. Really, literally something for everyone.
Yeah,
will be at the box
the end
office
of the year
this weekend.
They're pulling out all those stops.
Everybody's going to have a movie in theaters. Let us know what you think of what we said below. Anything that you want us to check. Any questions that you have. Are you happy that Venom is crushing it in China? Some people aren't. I know, but
knock knock. They let the devil in.
Knock knock. Venom is in the box office top 10. That's awful. Okay, I'm going to quit while I'm behind. Lon, thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you joining me. Roth, hopefully we'll be back in this seat on Charting next week, but we will be back soon with more reviews, more news, and everything else right here on Screen Junkies News. Thanks for watching.